We're looking at ICT in humanities, and therefore, maybe perhaps I should first start with what ICT can do for presentations. And primarily, if you type into a site called tome.ai, I don't know if you have looked at Tome AI, you can type in and you can get a presentation in 3 seconds or depending on your internet connection, up to 5 minutes. And this is what the AI gives it to you in a second. I didn't do anything other than type in the title of the topic. So let's see what we can do if you gave another topic, right? Like if we had to state that we are not too happy with this, we want to change this, or we want to look through something else. It's a free application that allows me to go on, look at create, and focus on, and please feel free to interrupt at any point with questions. We'll try and see whether we can answer it while we're going in. So ICT for humanities, uh, for higher education, if we type in that, and you have it generating outline. You can give it more instructions, such as 7 slides, 8 slides, 15 slides for 10 minutes. You can choose which one you want. And say we talk about this one. This is the one that I want to continue with. This is what the AI comes in with. It gives you an outline, it gives you the title, it presents to you content, and then finds pictures that it can map, and your presentation is kind of ready. Now, in this kind of an age where you have technology that enables you to look at, create presentations at a go, where you can perhaps look through and say, try again, or you could look at it and say that you don't, you didn't like what this was putting in and you wanted to edit it. And you can edit, you can go in and edit a particular slide, export it, etc. But in this day and age of humanities where we have, and we can also come in and edit out here. But if we are looking at presentations being made by AI, if we are looking at technologies that make our life a lot easier for us, to the extent that we don't have to think, the question then emerges as why should we think in the age of AI? Why should we not use AI? And even if we are using AI, what should be the kinds of perspectives we need to keep in mind while using it? And a simple aspect, this is, to me, I can put it in the comment section, so you can actually look through if you have not looked at AI for the presentation aspect. But if we are focusing on some things which enable us to paraphrase very easily, or we are able to use any aspects of paraphrasing and bring in the context that comes in very easily. For instance, that's something that Grammarly does. That's something that, Quillbot does. And we have a sample text, because I don't want to paste anything, but say we take it in and we are paraphrasing, and there's someone else who can take it anything from the website and paraphrase it very quickly for us on AI. What are we doing in arts and humanities? Why should we use arts and humanities? Is one of the key questions that comes in ICT for humanities. It is something that EdTech is constantly grappling with. It's something that academicians are constantly grappling with. What is the website that I'm mentioning? It was, to me, if you Google it, it is an app that actually you sign up for. It's browser based. And so I would be putting it up and sharing with you these elements. So you have something where there is a paraphraser. It allows you to paraphrase. It allows you to change in aspects, and you won't get caught by all the wonderful plagiarism checkers that come in. If that is the case, I think my net is going slow, but if that is the case that you have, why would I not, what should I really keep in mind when I'm thinking of using AI for technologies? And one of the most important elements that AI and technology can do for humanities is build conversations. So this is another site. This is something that comes through that's called Hypothesis. Um, Basically, I'm just going to put it up in the chat as well. So I have used education, but you can try and type in anything really. It allows you to have a conversation on a page, right? One of the most important aspects of humanities is building conversations, is building ideas, is taking someone's idea and working on it, being inspired by it, and then sharing it with others, and then building on it constantly, and others build with you. And that's one of the most key fundamental ideas that humanities has always built on. A writer cannot live in isolation. Many writers go to coffee shops, and they go to tapris, and they go by trains, and they go by bus, in order to hear conversations of people, in order to be a part of society and be inspired by some phrase, some trigger, some conversation idea, some situation, and then they use it and culminate it and present it in a story. That's what humanities in terms of literature is about. Very many of the people in politics, in economics, in so many of the social movements that we have had, we have an entire coffee shop movement. I mean, when we look at the Calcutta Coffee House, it is very famous for the kind of thinkers that came together, discussed over coffee and tea and more likely cigarettes, what the ideas of civic in unrest, civil unrest could be, and built in so much for independence movement, so much for the liberation movement that has come in and seeped in. And these are important aspects that we can use AI for. We can build it in a sense that you are going to a web page, and this is what Hypothesis is. You add this as a tool, and you go into a web page, and you can start having conversations with people. You can have conversations with people on PDF. To your cohort, you could look at it and bring about and learn about it as a digital learning experience. This is a very simple, and since you asked me for the site, and those who are not able to see, this is what the site's name is, hypothesis.is. And they have a lot of other resources, educative resources, case studies that you could look at, how you could be using these elements, just to give you a glimpse of it. It enables us to build on ideas. That's the most important aspect. So it is social annotation in action to a large extent. And what they could do is, in a writing seminar, they could look at using it in higher education spaces. There are many universities that are trying to use it, and I'm not going to get into each of these because you can work on them. This is similar to Wikipedia, but what does Wiki do? If you create a wiki for your students, they are putting in ideas, but not necessarily annotating. What this enables you to do is take an idea, leave a comment, and have other people comment on that idea. Very much like your Google Doc, but now on public pages. And that becomes an essentially interesting way of building in conversations. It is a way of meeting up forums. It can allow you to post whether you want it to a small cohort or to a public, but it enables us to build those conversations that makes humanities what it is. There are many such that we can look at. I don't know how many of you have used Mid-Journey. If you have, then that is great. But these are technology tools, and I'm going to search and just put this in so that you can see the site. This is Mid-Journey. This is how the site would be. It is something that is open and free, but it also has a paid version. Yes, that's definitely something that I'll try and answer, Atul, about your question. This is mid-journey. You can sign in, you can log in, you can try and see how you want to focus on. They can, and it will create different kinds of pictures for you. There are many people who have started using such kinds of tools to be able to create pictures. There are cases against Netflix because, sorry, yeah, all right. There are cases against Netflix because it used a lot of AI technology, paid AI technology, but nevertheless AI technology to focus. Yeah, yes. Sorry, let me just see if I can get this done. I had logged in, but apparently uh, not. I got logged out again. Yeah. So I will move out of the space and then work on that while we get in. But to answer Atul's question that came in the chat, in the Q&A, there are negative impacts such as ethical concerns and loss of human interaction, which is why I started with hypothesis to say that it could also build human interaction. It could be spaces for human interaction. But as teachers, while we are trying to be careful about these spaces, is to try and give them this element that says, why should you use, and this was my first question, why should we use our own brains when there is so much of AI that enables us to build these presentations in a jiffy? I mean, I just typed in something and you saw how it just built it up. It was in less time than we would think of creating outlines. It has, the AI already created outlines. So as educators, what do we need to think about is to get them to think and get students to think. So I'm going to go to another site. This is called Gapminder. You will find this difficult to read because they have really played with the words and the image, but it is called gapminder.org. If you want to know how it is, spelled, this is how it is spelled, Gapminder. And here you have a lot of ideas where people are being asked, what do you think is the actual content? What do you think is the proportion of domestic work that comes in? So what do you think happens to global temperature if we halve the net of CO2? It stays the same, it decreases, it actually keeps increasing, right? I mean, technically, when students are thinking through, you're also asking them to be critical thinkers. And these are kinds of tool sets, such as Gapminder, which has certain other tools as well, which talk about some things in terms of common misconceptions. How do we try and understand the world and how and why you should be thinking of writing your own presentation, even if it is wrong? Even if you make mistakes. I am not able to think in English, therefore I cannot make a presentation in English. One of the most popular excuses I get from students. I can't think in English, so I have ideas, but I don't want to write it. And so I will use AI to copy paste from another site, or I will use technology to find information, collate all of them in chat GPT and create another story or an essay that you can give me marks for. So to answer your question, Atul, it would be that I can use chat GPT, or I can use Bard, or I can use Bing, or I can use other AI tools to create my essay. But if AI can create that essay, can they think about something else that they could personally relate to? So we use certain strategies where we talk about, 4 hours method, where we just ask them to say, fine, this is AI generated material. Now, what is the one story in your life, in your perspective, or in the newspaper in the last week that you read that connects to what you have just spoken? And by getting students to try and relate instances in their own life or in something that they have come across, and then connect it to that concept, you are getting them to engage with the idea. They also will have to read critically. By making them ask questions of what, how, but also why some thought process has come to, right? So for instance, students will say, AI is very useful to me, and then I ask them why. And then they have to give me a list of reasons, but they can't just stop there. For each reason, they will have to tell me why. So for instance, there's a student who says, I can't speak in English, and therefore I can't think in English, and therefore I need AI to create those presentations for me. And you have wonderful presentations. In fact, you can go to a lot of sites where they will, take your text and convert it to a presentation, including Toomey. Toomey does that as well. Toom AI does that as well. So you ask them now, why could you not do it? Because I don't know English. Okay, so why do you not know English? Because I didn't learn it well. I was not taught well. Fine. Now the next question is, how can you improve? I mean, do you think that it is enough for AI to create your presentations, or do you want to create it? So those conversations, if we can have with our students, if you can talk about the fact that if you think that AI can write all those answers for you, and Gmail tells us that it can write our answers to all our emails, it suggests for us these 3 answers, and we have to pick and choose. If you think that AI can do all of that work, then why are we around? Why do you think we will forget employment and salary, but why are we around? In a sense, why do we like to, as humans, what is it that we serve as a purpose in life? And that aspect is something that they start then grappling with. So we ask them to look at certain sites, for instance, critically engage with, and even of whatever information they come across, they could be asked, why do you think that these are important? Can you create some things that can work through? What are the common misconceptions that ChatGPT information is presenting? These could be ways that we could look through. So I'm just giving in these few clues. There is a lot of tools that we can use online. Gapminder definitely has a lot of tools that work online. I'm not going to get into each of these, but you have many tools that are available. For instance, Dollar Street is available. You can go to home and you can check out the multiple tools that are available of how data can be gathered. And we can ask them to think about issues. We have students who come in and state that they want to focus on AI in a sense, and they want to really focus on in terms of trying to think about information statistics, find Google, and they go to Google and they will search the most important and the first 2-3 hits. Typically, this is what anyone and everyone would do. So can we ask questions to get them to start thinking about, are block divisions very common? A very simple question that we ask some of our students at times is for Google search. So if I'm going to Google search and I'm typing, since I am from Mumbai, I will type in Mumbai, but I will type in Mumbai district blocks, right? And these are the different blocks that Wikipedia will throw up to me. It will throw up to me the list of neighborhoods that are there in Mumbai. It will tell me that Mumbai will consist of 2 separate regions. But if I then change the question, I'm an educator, I want something in terms of education. and I want to know what those districts are, it then changes the blocks. Education blocks are different from geographical blocks. And schools will then give you a new site. It then just has about 12 blocks. And these elements of trying to understand how you will search effectively, what you need to be aware of to think, what is it that you search and what are the keywords you input into that search box in order to search effectively, is one element and part of how we can get students to constantly start thinking. That's one part. The other part of it is to try and look up, is the information that's going to be located, is it going to be the same if I change my location? If I'm typing in map of India, from Indian perspective, and another from China's perspective, are the two maps the same? Is a question that could be viewed in. And then the questions that we could have if we are looking at, you know, that we could be focusing on is how would a person in China then feel about India as a country and start having those conversations. If I have grown up all my life believing that Arunachal Pradesh is part of China, how will I feel about India claiming it? 60% of water in the Brahmaputra, the 60% collection is actually in Arunachal Pradesh, the major freshwater reservoir that you get of the Brahmaputra. Majority of the Brahmaputra is actually in China. And then, of course, India has some, and then it goes and flows into Bangladesh and meets the sea. But if I am Chinese and I've grown up thinking Arunachal Pradesh is part of my country, and I feel that India is claiming it for its own, how do I feel about India? How do I feel and perceive about these elements? If I'm an Indian and I know that Chinese children have grown up thinking in this manner, does my view of how I will negotiate with them, how I will talk with them change? These are the kinds of questions and dialogues we can have in the classroom, even as we are using technology. So we can bring in the fact that there is a lot of technology. It is easy to manipulate data, and it is very easy to figure out that, what are the facts. Facts can be manipulated. And if facts can be manipulated, but the facts that we are given do shape the way that we think of the world or the way we think of someone else. The facts that we are given about climate change does give us a viewpoint on how we respond to climate change. But there are other facts also being given to us. There is the fact of climate change, that it is an urgent problem, but there is also a fact of economic poverty, and that is an urgent problem. So if we can think about these elements and shape it in that manner, it really helps. So these could be the kinds of projects that you give. I hope that answered your question. I do use quite a few from here. In terms of talking about daily lives, there is a lot of data. There is InGapMinder, there is Dollar Street, that helps you as tools to think about how families in the world are living or how there are differences and similarities. And you can choose to explore some of these and figure out how they live around the world. Are they more different because they are on the other side of the continent? Or are they similar to us because they are at the same economic level as us? Does culture really make a difference in the way that we have utensils? So for instance, in this, I could just look at something as simple as utensils, right? And I could focus on something as drying dishes, the way that we have cutleries or kitchen or anything of that sort. So I could think about dish brushes. What should we look at? cleaning equipment, cleaning floors. So if we look at how floors are cleaned and what kind of floors are there across the country and around the world, and we find the kind of sweeping that they are doing or the kind of materials that they are using, and the economic strata that they have, in terms of the dollars. And these are life created elements. We can try and see if they come through in a particular space of this sort. And since this is an English literature summit, I will say, how can I use this in English literature? Very often, in order to get students to think about how to analyze character and situations, we start doing certain kinds of exercises where we ask them, so if someone has said that they are poor, and something, of course, that literature text will not, have ideation for, but says that someone says that they are poor, then what is the kind of bed that they will have? What is the material of bed sheet that they would have? Would they have a bed, or would they have just, a mattress to lay on the ground? What kind of material will they use to sweep? What kind of shelves will they have in their house? If we get them to start thinking and placing a character. So I do this thing where we tell them, you have to create a cinematic scene to set this context that he was living a hard life. The character was living a hard life. So it said in a text, he was poor and he didn't have much space. Great. Now, design for me as an art director, where is this coming from? And you can use Mid-Journey. You can use some other fancy AI tool to create these images, but you have to select that image and then justify that image as to why you thought that that was the best image. And that's some kind of exercise and project that they can do. And for the shaping of these perspectives, I use Dollar Street sometimes to tell them how people so far apart can still be very similar in how they are using materials, and how advanced economies, developed economies, seem to use more electrical gadgets, and economies that are less advanced seem to use more manual gadgets, irrespective of, even though the price difference between these may not be very much. And even though the difference between these two economies is also equivalent, right? Like there is 654, 875, and 1,300. Typically, you would think that 875 and 654 may be closer in nature. Apparently not. And so you could think about these elements, or similarly as Nigeria and so on and so forth, or Cameroon, where it is 1,116 a month. But then you start looking at the economic development of those countries and then say, oh, that may be a reason. Maybe you look at another reason as to why may these people be using more of the broom, a manual sweep, than using these electronic gadgets. What does economics of the country have to do with it? But it may be just infrastructure. Electricity may not be available all the time. And so students, when they have to start thinking and coming up with these answers, or even if they use technology to find these answers, as long as they are able to be in the thinking process, AI is a great element. So I am doing a time check. I do realize I have just about 10 minutes. So I'll just show you some of the tools that are there. This is called Story Weaver. I have used it with students who feel that they are not able to present questions or answers. They can create using images, or they can create images, but they can also create using pictures. Each time I'll be asked to do this, right? Okay. They can create using pictures and finding out these pictures in a sense. All of this will take time, but you can understand that there are multiple images available and students can create stories and become authors. So they could create very simple stories themselves. There is something that you can talk about as Explorables. These has, I will share this link to you with you. Explorables ES has, sorry, I'm not getting the chat, but I'll type in the answer to someone else. So I'm just typing in an answer. And in a sense, you have Explorables ES, which allows you to, play around, look at earth sciences, look at social science, but also look at art or journalism and build stories. So you can create your own tools and technologies. In higher education, it's very easy to get students to think about it. So there are certain kinds of questions out here which says, just how bad is the drug overdose epidemic? And you draw it. So there is this very simple exercise that they will ask for people to explore, and they will just say that you have to draw it, right? And state how did you manage to, focus on from these elements. You can say how I did, just tell me the answers. Um, just let me know what the answers are, what comes into these elements of places, and so on and so forth. So they can actually play around with this and check their perceptions. Since you were asking me about how to make them critical thinkers, humanities is about thinking, is about exploring, and is about asking questions why, for the sake of it sometimes. Humanities is the reason why we have games. We are endlessly exploring games. We play Scrabbles and we play games which will enable us to explore how to tell a story. Some of the best stories are from storytelling games. What can you do? So you have a lot of these kinds of stories and, soft chalk and resources that enable you to create stories and talk about it. So this is manifold, and it allows people to, create animated resources. And these are resources that people and students can access. There are open access books, open textbooks that can look at things, and they could focus on how, and any one of you can create it. There are podcast networks which allow us to also not just be part of these podcasts, but also create our own network. So since you were talking about projects, there could be that you enable your students to come up with podcasts that focus on humanities connection. Explore questions that really work on asking, finding an interesting question and asking why. Sorry, I stopped sharing. All right, so explore why. There are these sites such as Freakonomics and podcasts that really focus on exploring why do you think you come across an interesting story in the newspaper today. Uber women drivers are paid less than male drivers, for instance. And then you could look up and find out why. There could be a lot of research done on it. They could be creating these kinds of things. So there are multiple channels that allow you to have those questions, then explore it, link it, and go on. And with that, I will pause in order to, yes, Janki has a point which says, I feel technology is impermanent, but values are permanent. And if we can instill this, it can lead them to think about what is really important and not important. True that. And I think if we can focus, Janki, on actually focusing on some of these aspects, we can try and see if questions can be prompted on the net. And one of the points that I was trying to make, but my net is slightly going slow, and so I'll stop sharing. But one of the points I was trying to make with this is, if we even in Google search and find and change our location, a lot of information that is given to us is changed. So a very simple exercise for students to do is just change their location on the Google search engine. And then there is a perspective change that happens. The way that India's poverty is portrayed, or the way that India's shining is portrayed, is very different from one channel to the other, is very different from one country to the other. Is the way that we have, I mean, when some foreign dignitary wins, or when Indians win a medal in the Olympics, the way that our country's newspapers are focused upon, if you go across the world, you will find that that is not the perspective that came in at all. And it has real world consequences. In China, in not just China, I don't want to make it a, targeted country specific element, but in, say, even in other countries like America or others who have won more Olympic medals, it is like, oh, India just managed to get one of the many medals that they competed in. That's the kind of story that is built. And in the Paris climate change agreement that was being happening, the way that newspapers in Europe were presenting India, China, and the Southeast Asia and South and African nations as potential hazards for climate change improvement, and the fact that India uses a lot of coal, and so does China, as being the most corrupting influences and the worst of offenders, was a huge story that came up in every newspaper, because it was in Paris that the climate change agreement was happening. And Europe was constantly targeting these two countries till India and China got their act together and started presenting in every single conference that they had, almost jointly, would constantly present about the amount of carbon emissions that they were accountable for versus what the developed country was accountable for, and constantly talked to the press and changed the perception around it. It made a difference in how the first world country was then started getting pressurized into enabling technology transfer to become a little bit more accessible, so that we can have better green technology at cheaper prices, because the best research of green technology is being done in developed countries. And so these kinds of stories and these kinds of elements of how perception matters, how newspaper journalism matters, how presenting facts in a particular light, in a particular slant, in a particular order changes perceptions, can be done very easily, also using AI. So you could have 17 different texts and then get them to say, how do you feel about it? So have a mood marker. And yes, I know just a minute left, and so I will stop. Yes, Haribabu, I think I've given you, for assessment, there are many tools. One of them is rubrics, but assessment is typically something that if you can make it open-ended in humanities is all the better. But you have Kahoot, you have Mentimeter, of course, as points, as very popular tools. But you also have a lot in terms of discourses, like hypothesis, as I was showing you, can be used as a tool and a framework to get students to annotate a particular text and say, how did you think about it? And then different people agree and opine on it. So we have a page which has just comments, and I can do this with even Google Docs. So you can present it on Google Docs, and there could be just a comment which is collaborative as a sharing space, and students have to present their opinions. That becomes our discussion forum. And we do this a lot more sometimes, because online sometimes is a safe space. Sometimes students look at other people's faces and feel intimidated, but they seem to write, and we allow them to write in Hindi or Marathi or English if they so want. Areas of research in digital humanities is huge. If you search for it, there is an entire forum for digital humanities research, Digi research and other forums. But yes, it is still only beginning to take shape. And there are multiple pathways you can take up. One of these that I was talking about is, how do we use it? What are the technologies? But there's a lot of technology being done in digital humanities on NLP, the natural linguistic processing fields, and to see how it can do work there. Yeah, I took one more minute. So Ashok, over to you. Sorry. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Anusha, for your interesting and illuminating talk on ICT for humanities. And thank you for demonstrating some AI tools such as Midjourney, Gapminder, Dollar Street, Storyweaver, then Hypothesis, Explorables, Soft Chalk, and Humanity Pod Network. I'd like to take a moment to express my appreciation for our speaker and the valuable insight she has shared during the plenary session on ICT for humanities. And Dr. Anusha, your expertise, knowledge, and ability to convey complex ideas clearly, engagingly were certainly commendable. And your understanding of the role of information and communication technology in the humanities was evident throughout your presentation. And you have provided an overview of the ways in which technology has transformed in the field, highlighting the benefits it brings to research, collaborations, and analysis. And the examples, case studies you shared certainly gave us the ideas that these advancement, real world impact, inspiring us to explore further possibilities. In addition to this, I just would like to say your acknowledgement of ethical, legal, and social cultural considerations surrounding the use of ICT in the humanities was also certainly noteworthy. And as you emphasize the need for ongoing discussions and collaborations or collaborative efforts to ensure that technology is leveraged responsibly while addressing issues such as privacy, copyright, and access to digital resources. So overall, I can say your expertise, passion, and ability to engage the audience made the plenary session genuinely enriching experience. And I'm sure that your session sparked new ideas, encouraged fruitful discussions, and motivated us to continue exploring this potential of ICT in the humanities. So I extend my heartfelt appreciation to you for your valuable contribution. And with this, we would like to take some of the questions from the audience. So if there are any questions, we can take one or two questions as we are running short of time.
I
Yes.
have answered it. The person who asked me for digital resources, there is Dharti, Dharti, which is archive. That was the only other link that was to be given. I've answered it. I think everyone else I did answer. So. But if there are, please.
Yes. So if there are any other questions, you can go ahead. Otherwise, I just would like to make one point while I read your research articles and papers, and I like the one word in one of the articles that you wrote, that how technology be made an effective medium to ensure the provision of safe space for the students to express themselves freely. And you have said that we define safe space in the study as one of that stress-free and non-judgmental and can be achieved through collaborative learning. So I like to hear about that from you. Yes, Dr. Anusha.
So, in a sense that many a time students in a classroom, and we have students who are sometimes very shy, don't like to speak up in the class. But using technology, sometimes even in the class, we have managed to help them we have WhatsApp groups or Telegram groups that we use. And sometimes when, as the conversation is flowing, we just tell, can you at least put in, just like we use emoticons on Zoom, etc., to say slow down, etc. Can we use images to say, I have understood, I have not understood, or go slow, or something of that sort. So they have actually in classrooms, sometimes I get students who will type in an emoticon or they will hold a placard or they will present that. So these are very simple techniques that through the Zoom classes we realized will get students to engage in, and they don't feel that they're interrupting. They don't know the skill of interruption. But now through these points, they are able to understand how they can still indicate to interrupt. So that's one point. The other is if I'm trying to create a safe space, if students feel that they are going to be marked for only the final product, they are always under the pressure to think that my final product should be very good. So one of the reasons why we have a lot of people just using ChatGPT and Grammarly, and the entire text is only done by and AI is because they feel that their thought process is not as important as the finished product is. So a lot of times I have actually told them, I want to see your drafts and collaborative projects, especially group projects. What were the ideas that you had? So there must be a discussion, there would be a comment on something else. And so can you take a Google Doc, and we have these shared doc spaces, and can you type in, and you can type in Hindi because it allows for it, and you can all that you need is that additional, add-on um, sans tool, and you can type in Hindi, you can type in anything, but I want to see your thought process. I'm going to give marks out of 20. I'm going to give 10 marks for the process of engagement. And these are the parameters. So we discussed the parameters of engagement right at the beginning. Did you look up some article? Did you find a, and so these are the points. Did you research and find some article? That's one. Second, could you connect it and relate it to your own life experiences or your own emotions? So sometimes students don't know how to even search for some ideas, but can they think about and relate it to their own experience, or at least their own emotion? So what did you think and how did you do that? And then the fourth one is, what do you think, and why do you think this can be useful? Or how can I present it in, why would a other party be interested in it? So you do perspective mapping, and this is not for every single project, but for one or two projects, and the parameters change according to the project. It could be about how you are asking them to think about another point or express their own relation. And this process, part of the project is actually, did you do all of this? I'll give you 10 marks. And then every one of you has to say it. It doesn't matter if it is repetitive, but you have to be able to say it. And then they come up with wonderful ideas and expressions. And because the process is not always known outside the group, only I am reading it and the group reads it, they feel a bit more comfortable. And over a period of time, they do feel comfortable sharing all of this, even in a larger public domain. So sometimes if it is very, very discomforting, we put them as paired activities. So these are kinds of tools which the teacher can be privy to, but does not have to be shared publicly. Yeah, that's useful, I find.
Great, great. Thank you so much for sharing that experience. And I totally agree with you that it's very important to internalize the ideas and making the students go through that process of disseminating the knowledge and coming with new perspective and new idea. And it's very important also to create the non-judgmental environment through these. And I'm sure that blended learning, flipped classrooms, and even online teaching, these are the some of the examples that we can take forward. But thank you so much for your answer. And as we are in time, so once again, I'm really grateful to you for your wonderful presentations. And thank you, everyone. We are grateful for your presence. And thank you so much for joining us today.